All right, let's dive into a topic that feels about as American as it gets, football. But we're not just going to talk about X's and O's. We are going deep into football as this massive cultural force, all through the eyes of the cultural critic Chuck Klosterman. His big idea? That football is pretty much the last thing all of America shares, but that its time on top might be coming to an end, and faster than you think.
Okay, so if you want to grasp just how dominant football really is, you only need to see this one number, 93. Get this, in 2023, of the top 100 most watched TV broadcasts in the entire United States, 93 of them were NFL games. I mean, that's not just popular, that is a complete and total cultural takeover. Nothing else is even in the same league. So, how on earth did that happen?
Well, according to Klosterman, the secret isn't just about touchdowns and tackles. It's about this kind of magical and totally accidental relationship the sport has with television. He truly believes it is the greatest show TV has ever had, and the reasons why are, well, they're probably not what you're thinking. But here's the kicker. For all its power, Klosterman argues that football's empire is really built on a series of lucky breaks and happy accidents. And right now, those same foundations are starting to show some really deep, really serious cracks. And that brings us to the big question we're going to dig into. Is the king of American culture about to lose its crown?
You know, in the world we live in now, with a million different streaming services and social media feeds all pulling for our attention, the idea of a monoculture seems almost impossible. You know, something that basically everyone experiences together, like the finale of MASH back in the day. Well, Klosterman argues that today, there's really only one thing left that fits the bill: professional football.
For decades now, football has just woven itself into the very fabric of American life. It's a shared language. We all just get it. We know the archetypes, right? The prom queen always dates the quarterback. If you see a football coach character pop up in a movie, you instantly know what that guy is all about. It's this set of cultural codes we all understand instinctively, whether we're diehard fans or not.
So, the big question is, why? How did football achieve this status? Well, this is maybe Klosterman's most brilliant point. He says it accidentally became the perfect piece of content for the medium of television.
He basically takes all the biggest complaints about football and flips them completely on their head. You know how people say a 3-hour game only has like 11 minutes of actual action? Klosterman says that's what makes it perfect. All the constant stops and breaks, they aren't bugs, they're features. They give you time to run to the fridge, to talk to your friends, to check your fantasy team. It is perfectly built for the way we actually live and watch TV.
And what's crucial to understand is that none of this was planned. It wasn't some master stroke of genius. It was a complete coincidence. This enforced marriage, as he calls it, just happened to create the most powerful partnership in the history of entertainment.
Here's a perfect little example. On TV, you can never see the whole field at once. So when a quarterback drops back to pass, there's this tiny split second where you, the viewer, have no idea if a receiver is open downfield. Klosterman argues that tiny little moment of mystery creates this psychological tension. It's a little puzzle, and your brain gets subconsciously hooked trying to solve it on every single play. What seems like a technical flaw is actually a key part of its addictive power.
But, you know, even the most powerful machine starts to show its age eventually. The gears start to grind, the pressure builds up, and this is where we start to see the cracks in football's foundation. I mean, history is pretty clear on this. From Roman gladiators to vaudeville, no cultural giant has ever stayed on top forever. And Klosterman's point is, why would football be any different?
So he boils it down to 3 main threats, 3 big existential problems that could bring the whole thing down. 1, the economics are becoming unsustainable. 2, our social connection to the game is fading. And 3, the very way we're fans is shifting from a shared experience to something totally individual.
Let's talk about the money. The TV networks are paying these absolutely astronomical sums for the rights to broadcast NFL games. Why? Because live football is the last sure thing that can deliver a giant audience to advertisers. But those deals are getting so massive, so inflated, that Klosterman predicts the bubble has to burst eventually, and football could become a victim of its own incredible success.
But that third threat, that might be the sneakiest one of all. This rise of the metagame is changing the very nature of what it means to watch football.
Think about it. Being a fan used to be so simple. You rooted for your team, your city, the uniform. That was it. Then fantasy football came along, and suddenly you cared more about your running back stats than if your team actually won. And now, with sports betting exploding, the most important thing might not be who wins, but whether a team covers the point spread. Our loyalty has shifted from the team to our own wallet.
So what this does is create this totally parallel experience. You're watching the game, sure, but you're also watching your bet. Now, in the short term, that makes every single play more intense and exciting. But in the long run, it chips away at that shared communal feeling that made football the monoculture to begin with. We're all looking at the same screen, but we're all invested in totally different things.
Okay, so when you put all these pieces together, the history, the weird magic with TV, the shaky economics, the changing way we watch, you get to Klosterman's biggest and most profound idea. Football has become so much more than just a game.
There's this term philosophers use called a hyperobject. It sounds really academic, but the idea is pretty simple. It's something like climate change or the internet that's so massive, so all-encompassing, that we can't fully see it or understand it, even while we're living right inside of it.
And that's Klosterman's final thesis. Football is America's hyperobject. The story of its rise, its power, and its potential fall, it isn't just a story about sports. It's a story about America, about our media, our economy, our communities, and even our relationship with truth itself. I mean, just look at the game itself. It is a mirror. It's built on controlled violence, deep us versus them tribalism, really rigid hierarchies. And at the end of the day, there's always a final objective score, a clear winner and a clear loser. In a confusing world, maybe football just tells us something about who we are and what we value.
And that leaves us with this one last really big question to think about. When people in the future look back on our era, the same way we look back at the Romans and their gladiators, what is our obsession with this game going to tell them about us? It's a question that goes way beyond the football field, and it's why trying to understand football is in a really weird way trying to understand ourselves. Thanks for tuning in.